Oh, it looks
We
like
are
everything's
live.
through the top here. Huh?
We are live.
Yeah. Yay. I'm glad I'm alive. No topic. Joe can't come up with any topics.
Hey, I'm not the only one on this show. You could come up with topics too.
Oh, whatever.
I was busy today.
What?
right after I got done talking to you, I had the occupational therapist lady call and saying she wanted to stop by. Well, she's like, I could stop by now, or I could wait a couple hours and stop by then. And I looked at the clock and I'm going, I don't think so. A couple hours ain't going to do.
No, that won't work for me.
So,
That won't work. Sorry to tell you that.
no, I mean, well, I'm not sitting there and it wasn't even the same woman. It's like, Jesus Christ. You know, it, she's like, well, I don't know what you've been doing and then stuff like this. And it's like, so now we got to start this crap all over again.
Because they couldn't send you the same person?
Yeah, well, at least the same person. She comes in here and it's like she already knows what we're doing and what to expect. She's like, all right, get the,
Mm-hmm.
putty out and start working with it. And then, she's like, set up the typing test on the computer and let's see how you've improved and, things like that. Nope, this woman had basically no clue, no starting point, nothing. And it's like, come on.
Yep, let's just be fucking stupid about things.
Well, it's like, I don't need you know, this kind of strength to do this. I don't need the strength to do this. That's going fine. I need this, back to normal. The hand.
So you can do this one again?
No, fuck you. No, it's more because, I can type a lot faster with both my hands than just one. I've been reduced to henpecking like you.
I've always henpecked. Never
Yeah,
said I
well,
could type.
I don't like doing that, you know. So now it's like a lot of typing to put something on Notepad and then cut and copying, and pasting.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show you a true picture I found.
A true picture?
Yeah, you tell me this isn't like something true.
Yeah, let me see. Hanging back over here to you. No, that would be true. Winner of America's drunkest state.
Toll booth ahead, 3 cheese curds.
Possibly. Yeah.
I think that went up to 4 though, maybe 5 since it's been
No,
posted.
no, yeah, it could be all the way up to 6 with all the tariffs now.
Not to get political here, but that was
That's not
funny.
being political. I just,
I
you know,
mean, considering how true that is, if you really want to find out if Wisconsin is truly the drunkest state, all you gotta do is hit downtown, during this time of year, maybe a little later, the State Street, and all the bars down there, and see how full they are, and
mm-hmm.
you've got, whoops, this fucking program when you share something and all of a sudden that happens. But
Yeah, it
you
goes
know,
with your gun, yeah.
you go to the small towns around here,
Mm-hmm.
and you got maybe a couple of bars on one block, maybe 2 bars, 3 bars on the same block, and maybe 4 or 5 in the total small towns, right?
Hmm.
You got down on State Street, you got at least 2 or 3 bars on each block on both sides of the street. So by the time you end up at the bottom of State Street, you've probably walked by 30 or 40 bars.
Right.
Easy. And they're all full of people.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying about it.
there's more
It's like
bars.
I said, that sign's probably true as can be because
There's more.
Wisconsin is actually known as one of the main drinking states of the Midwest.
Yeah, there's more bars on the W campus than there are restaurants. You know, I'll bet on that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's all the restaurants. Everything from the good, like the good fine dining type restaurants down to your fast food restaurants. The bars will outnumber them in that small campus radius down there. You know, and
Hmm.
I mean, if you ever, I was down there on campus and I couldn't believe it. I used to work in the dorms, cleaning the dorms in the summertime, right? It was an LT job, but it paid good. I didn't get the same benefits that the state employees did because I was like limited term. You get so many hours and you're done. You got to find someplace else to go. Well, there were on a weekend, but you don't work on the weekends. So from Friday to Monday, and you come back on Monday, those dorms would be cluttered with nothing but pizza boxes and beer cans and beer bottles. It's
Hmm.
like that's all they lived on, pizza and beer. Had a strip club on.
I don't remember a strip club being up there.
Had a strip club on one corner, a regular bar, and then 2 other corners had a church and a cemetery.
Yeah, but I don't remember a strip club ever being up there.
I've never really been in Appleton much, so I couldn't tell you. But I have seen some of those. There was one somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but there was somewhere. There was a strip club. It was along a highway, not too far from here, and it had like that Las Vegas style sign to it.
Hmm.
You know, like when you first enter Vegas, it says "Welcome to Las Vegas."
Hmm. Well, down by Elkhorn, there's strip clubs down there. There's gentlemen clubs.
Yeah, they closed down
Out
the
off of 14, there's one out there
they closed down
on
the
the other
one
side
in
of
Madison.
Middleton. Yeah, the one that was downtown Madison there. I believe that one's gone now. That's where a lot of our customers, or when we worked at Union, a lot of we
Visions
had one. Yeah, Visions. We
on
had
the
a guy that was.
squad.
We had a guy that I always had to go pick up because he's a guy in a wheelchair, and he'd always go to Visions on Friday nights.
Yeah,
And I was working late Fridays all the time because we needed somebody a guy, not a lady, not a woman, but a guy to go pick him up because he didn't want to get picked up until like 11, 12 o'clock because he was in visions and he was having a good time.
Getting those lap dances
And I would,
in that wheelchair.
I'd get in there, I get to go pick him up, and I'd have to go inside to get him. And of course, the guys at Visions got to know me, and they'd just, hey, he's over there. And he'd let me in, and I'd have to go and get his attention. And there's the women up on the stage dancing, doing their thing.
I went to
I always got to go in Visions for free when I had to pick him up on a Friday.
I went to that place once with a couple of my buddies. We decided kind of like
No, the strip clubs are overrated.
hoof it down East Washington Avenue. We were down by Milwaukee Street, and we started at the Union Tavern and started working our way up towards East Town. And then we hit like what was that one? As Patty's. They used to sit in that little strip mall area with Walgreens, where Walgreens is now. But anyway, we got up to Visions, and you got a cover charge, a drink minimum, and all this.
Mhm.
And it's like we looked and turned around and said, fuck that. And we ended up at Rumors, and then we ended up at Club Lamarck. We didn't even stay. We didn't even walk. We didn't even pay the cover charge. It's like, it's worthless. I mean, when you consider that their drinks were like 2 or 3 times what a normal bar charged.
Oh, I know. I know.
Even this
Their
was
drinks were outrageous price,
right.
and
This was in
a
the
lot of it
80s
was watered
too.
down.
So I
too.
can imagine, and I can imagine what they'd be today. So we decided not to. But when I started working at Union, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up, because I was kind of an airport person. I liked hanging out at the airport and getting some of these nice big fares sometimes. But I'd be coming out of the airport or going back to the
So you got the
airport,
assholes.
and I'd get a call to pick up at Visions or something. And oh my God, some of those guys, I mean, some of them were even we had like, I had picked up like about 5 or 6, because I had the minivan that we used as a cab. And I picked up a bunch of bankers from out of town. They somehow managed to get the Vision. So I picked these guys up, and the next thing they wanted was a massage parlor.
Well, that's the happy ending over there.
Yeah, there was, right on the other side there was like that Asian massage parlor and stuff.
Yeah, you go down.
And
It's
it's
just
like,
down on the other side of the street. There you've got
well, I
the
didn't.
geisha. It's the geisha house.
The geisha house. The only reason I knew these places was because I was a cab driver.
Yep.
I never went there
You
myself.
liar! You liar! You know you went there for the happy ending a few times.
Yeah, right. But anyway, they asked me.
That's why you're laughing about it.
They asked me if there was such a place, and the blah blah blah, and then they like, well, can we get your card? We want to, call you back, have you come back. So I ended up with like just that group of bankers, and there was like 5 or 6 of them. I ended up at the end of the night, when it was all said and done, they got back to their hotel. I ended up with $200 or $300 in my pocket, extra, just from the bankers.
That
was above and beyond the meter. But I couldn't believe how many people, I'd pick up at the airport, they'd want the strip club before going to their hotel.
Yeah.
Or it's like, take me to a hotel, check in, and then take me to the closest strip club. You know, they expected you to know where these things were too.
Yeah. And we pretty much did being
You
cab
know,
drivers.
and I thought after working security before driving cab, working security all these years downtown in the downtown area, that I saw most of the dark and you know, the seedy part of Wisconsin, Madison. Nope, nope, just drive cab once. You know, you go pick up at the.
You when you drive cab, you see every little
You know,
place.
I'll never forget when I was driving cab and I had to pick up somebody that worked at Red Letter News. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, there was only that back parking lot to stop around there to pick up a passenger. So you pull in that back parking lot off Milwaukee Street, and I'm waiting for the guy. You know, I went in, and he knew I was there, and he was just
Mm-hmm.
finishing, you know, his register stuff or whatever he had to do. You know, and I said, okay, I'll wait outside, and he's like, yeah, just start the meter. I'll be out in less than 5. And so as I'm sitting there, got the window down, you know, smoking a cigarette, waiting for the guy. Fucking black woman comes up, and she's a fucking hooker.
She
I
wanted to give you the happy ending in the back of the car.
I tell you what, she tried offering every, you know, oh, 40 to, you know, and it's like, I don't think so. I'm working. And besides, she was a real ugly bitch too. I mean, my God, you'd think some of these hookers would take some pride in their looks. But yeah, it's like,
You
and then
wouldn't think.
it's like after that, I stopped taking all calls that took me to Red Letter News. I couldn't believe it, and I heard rumors about that kind of stuff. You know, just like I heard
Mhm.
rumors that if you went north in the trucks, you know, out there the pine cone where it used to be in north of Madison, you know, out there by Token Creek, you got the 2 truck stops right across the street from each other.
Yeah.
I heard stories, but not until I started driving cab did I see how much they were true, you know, of the lot lizards, you know. We've been jumping from semi truck to semi truck.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. I seen actual lot lizards
Yeah.
because the kind of job I do, and I've actually stayed in at the truck stops because of
So they give you a happy ending?
hell no. I kept them fucking doors locked.
Well, I thought you said
I
you've
ain't
seen
touching
them.
that.
I thought maybe
I've seen them.
he
I
had
seen
them
them.
come visit
I
you at
seen
the
them going
hotel.
from truck to truck. I ain't gonna fucking touch that shit. That shit's nasty. You catch stuff from that.
But you'd think they'd have more respect for their bodies and at least, I
Dude,
mean,
they
some.
can do something a crack dealer can't. They can wash their crack and sell it again. They're not gonna fucking have any respect for it.
Yeah. Ugh. But that's the kind of shit you wouldn't fuck with a stolen dick.
No, you did not. No, I wouldn't touch that with a stolen dick. I agree.
You know. But Easter this year, which happens to be Sunday,
And it's on 420.
yeah, my favorite holiday every
Uh,
year, 420. You know, yeah, that whole thing has got installed now. You know that?
what's that?
not to
But
get not to get political at all, but this, it almost seemed like every year or so it would be on a ballot somewhere to legalize it in some state
mhm.
for medical or recreational use or both or whatever. And you don't even see them trying anymore. I know why, because it ain't gonna get passed with the power that we have now. But it would have been nice if it would have become legal here in Wisconsin. But I don't see that happening too soon either.
Nope, and not really.
And and the thing is, there's the one place that we're real close to, that ever since we started doing the paranormal stuff, and the last couple of years, I think I've made the most trips ever, even more now than when I was driving cab down to the Chicagoland area, right?
Mhm.
And you would think that would be a good thing. Boy, they charge the most for that. I'd rather, I wish I could go to Michigan just as fast as I could go to Illinois. You know, because
Yeah,
I can get more for less money in Michigan,
yeah.
and usually better quality too. You know, I mean, for what I paid for in Illinois for just a little nugget, I paid that same amount of money and I got an entire OZ plus some. It's like fucking hey man,
Mhm.
big difference, big difference.
Wow.
And it's because they charge like 4 or 5 taxes in Illinois, you know. And in Michigan, it's just like going to any other store. You've got their state and the local tax, right? Like we do here. You got state tax and the local sales tax, adds
Mhm.
up to, no, you got a weed tax, a state weed tax, a city weed tax, you know, and
County weed tax.
yeah, exactly. But this is all in Illinois.
Mhm.
Michigan, no. You go in there and it's like, oh, first time there. Well, let's say first time here, it's like a 30% discount. But now you come back and you're like, all right, not to give away my age, but it's like over 55, you're a senior citizen. Well, there's a 10% discount. You know, they have discounts all the time. You know, you just have to
Yeah.
figure out where you fit in, which discounts, and if you get it wrong, oh wait, and they start asking you questions, and it's like, oh wait, you get a bigger discount doing it this way, you know, than you would doing it this way. And it's like, really? Okay. And that's Michigan. That was like a Michigan, my experience in a Michigan dispensary. You think you go in there thinking you're only going to get like the 10% discount because you're over 55.
Yeah.
And nope, they've got a special discount today. Oh no, you can get this, and then you get a discount
Yeah.
for 25%.
It's a special discount for special people.
I know where you're going with that. You know,
Just gotta come in and with your bicycle helmet and crayons.
hmm, man, that was probably one of the worst things I ever did.
What's that?
That you know, my dad drove bus, right? He drove
Yep.
city bus, right? And he
Yep.
was kind of an old-fashioned asshat. Anyway,
No, your dad an asshat?
when
No,
my
come
brother
on.
and I were younger, oh, we pissed him off.
You really think your dad was an asshat?
When we pissed him off so bad one day while he was at work, but it was so funny. Um, he he would be easy to find, you know, because you knew what bus he was driving. You could kind of trace and figure out what time he'd be where and when, right?
Yeah.
So Dwight and I figured this out. We were downtown, right on the square, waiting for his bus. So it was kind of a crowded bus stop. It was, getting. It was like in that lunch hour, lunch hour time frame. Between 12:30.
Hmm.
Where the square is kind of crowded too, because all the state workers are out on the lawn for lunch, right?
Yeah.
So he starts pulling up, and Dwayne and I are sitting there, and Dwayne puts his baseball cap kind of on, so not normal, off to a side or something, and I didn't, I've never really worn hats, but we were like doing the stop the bus, stop the bus, real loud and stuff, right in front of him, stop the bus. We get on the bus,
Eh.
we go, hi, Dad. And he just like sinks in his seat, like he felt like this high, because
You
everybody
guys were
heard us.
mean.
Even his passengers heard us, and his bus was loaded. It was almost standing room only on his bus at that time. And we did that real, real, real loud.
And you were too good at it.
And you could imagine how Dwayne just really took that a bit too far, and I mean, we did shit like that to our mom all the time, you
Hmm.
know, but it never really bit us in the ass, except it did bite Dwayne in the ass later, you know, but you just didn't do stuff like that to the old man. He kind of got pissed off that day. Didn't talk to us while we were on the bus, didn't even acknowledge us, gave us that look like if looks could kill, we were going to be dead, you know. But it was funny, Dwayne and I just couldn't help it. It was just, you know,
Too easy.
it was, it was just too easy, you know. I mean, we did shit like that to my mom and stuff because, she didn't drive, so we ended up like walking to Kmart with her when we were a kid, So that was like, you know, a half-mile walk or so, right?
Right.
And Dwayne would do stupid shit, but he got paid back later because of his stupid shit. But that's how karma pays you back. Ends up walking that same
Oh,
road at night and decides to moon the first car that's coming up the hill, and it happened to be a cop. You know, that was funny though. Yeah, we were pretty mean sometimes.
sounds like it.
Well, when you're sitting there waiting and trying to kill time, you get a little bored, especially downtown. Nothing but a bunch of suits at the time, at that hour mostly, waiting for dad because, he's almost off work,
Right.
you know. We figured it was easier to hitch a ride with him than, and have him drop us off along his way home than to take a bus and wait an hour for the bus to get from the square to over by the Coliseum. Dad kind of went by that way anyways. You know, Needless to say, by the time we got down to the bus company, though, he basically said, I should make you two walk.
Well, he should have. He was your dad, you know.
Yeah, but the thing was, we wouldn't have had to walk anyways. We would have just ended up sitting on a bus for an hour because we got on the buses for free. And he didn't have the power to take away the passes unless he physically took them from us. But at that point, it wouldn't have done any good anyways because over half the bus drivers knew who we were. So we didn't have to show that pass in the first place. But that also could have been a downfall at some times because if we ever got in trouble on any of those city buses, the
Yeah.
bus drivers already knew who we were, and the old man was going to find out about it anyway.
Yeah.
We never got in trouble on buses, though.
Because you knew better.
Well, yeah, when you got an entire family working for the bus company as it is, and your great uncle is the supervisor, the road supervisor, he's going to be the first one to find out. When there's trouble on the road, he's going to be the first one called. And, we didn't want that happening.
No.
We saw it happen once, and then, oh man, it sucks when you got somebody like that that's related to you for a big company like that, especially when you're going to school. And the school doesn't have the yellow and black or orange and black school buses, because in Madison they were using the city buses for middle school and elementary school and all of that. So the first time shit hit the fan on one of those school buses in the morning, fight broke out. Great uncle gets called, and the next thing you know, and not only did my great uncle get called, my uncle, my dad's brother, was driving the bus that we were on, that the trouble happened on. So you had my Uncle Mike driving the bus, my Uncle Paul's supervisor coming that way because a fight broke out on the bus. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, he gets there, and the first thing my Uncle Paul does is he pulls Dwayne and I off the bus, and he talks to us in the back seat of his car, right? Because he wants the truth. He figures we wouldn't lie to him, right? Told him what was happening, stuff like this. Boom, boom, boom. We didn't get returned to the bus. It's like, I'll just sit here. I'll be right back. And he took us straight to school. All right. Those other people had to sit there on the bus, wait for it to all settle down. Let's just say my brother and I made it to class on time, our first period on time, right?
The others didn't.
And the others didn't because, part of that punishment was, they could end up walking to school, So it was like they were trying to prove a point. This bus is going to sit here until we find out the truth. And we already know the truth. It's just we want you to confess.
Right.
So we got a lot of heat after that day from something like that.
Why the hell did you guys get the heat?
Because We didn't get into any trouble at all and got a free ride to school, made it to our class on time, no detention, and it's basically like, you were the snitches that told the supervisor who got
Snitches
into
get
the fight.
stitches, man.
But the thing was, my Uncle Mike told him who it was too. He just wanted, Uncle Paul just wanted
You
an
know that, right?
explanation.
Snitches get stitches.
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy.
Ah,
No. I never did get my dinner from you.
well, sucks for you, huh?
You said you were going to take me out to a steak dinner or something, asking me all about these different restaurants, and then you just never. It ended.
No, it's called the tease. So there.
Well, I think you should pull out your grill, not this weekend, but maybe the following weekend, and cook me
What's
a
wrong with
steak
this
dinner.
weekend?
I'm busy.
Well, maybe I'm not busy this weekend. I'm busy every other weekend.
Oh, fuck you. You
Uh
just do that to annoy me. See, I'm busy tomorrow because of wrestling.
huh.
It's WrestleMania weekend, and it's going to be a hell of a weekend. Yeah, I'll do that with you tomorrow. What time? I don't have a guest for the insane asylum, so I'm working on. I'll be taking some trips. That's the other thing. Like I think you and I should, and Tanya should take some of these trips to Chicago. These Paracons that I'm seeing, you know, the one costs us $1. I'm sure you can afford $1 to get
Nope.
into the place. Oh, fuck you.
It's not
You cheap
not to afford to get into the places. Fucking pay afford the fuel costs to go down there.
whatever.
Oh, my route's gonna be changing by
You
the way
know,
in
it's
about 2 weeks.
it's just a thing that we should do to try to do as many of these Paracons as we can to make connections so that when it gets okay, that's cool. 7 o'clock my time. All right. You know the the thing with that is that we make more connections. We'll have a nicer
Hmm.
list for guests to have on as it gets colder again. Well, make up your mind. Is it 6 or is it 7?
Now it's gonna be 8, and you just gonna have to wait.
7 your time? Nope. Now it's 6 your time. I'm so confused. So, but there's a couple of good ones coming up in Chicago, and they don't cost anything basically, just the
Mm-hmm.
gas and time to go down there. For me, it's a way to get out of the house for a nice little road trip.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm cooped up. You get out of the house every day.
Trade you. You can go do my route.
I would love to go back to work. But the problem is nobody hire me. I thought about like uh, uh, applying to drive cab here in town.
Yeah.
Because they got cab company here in Watertown.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I really don't know Watertown well enough.
Watertown's easy.
You know, if I knew it better, I'd go and try. But
But
now,
Watertown's easy.
now at this point, with my hand the way it is, I don't trust myself driving our truck. except to the dump. Hey, Tom, where have you been? You should be on here with us.
To the dump, to the dump, to the dump.
Yeah, well, that trailer really helped
Humpty,
us
Humpty, Dump.
this past weekend. Before that trailer, that $200 little trailer that we bought. Oh, that really helped. We got the whole driveway cleaned out of all that leaves and stuff that were swept up and been sitting there for over a year. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know. That's what somebody else said to me. You know. I'm wondering where Tom is. Tom, you should be here. You got the link.
Yeah, where you at, Tom?
You got the link. Where have you been for the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, Tom. You been AWOL, Tom. What the hell, Tom? Dude, you didn't get that straightened out, man.
Oh, that sucks.
It took them a while to get mine straight, but now I'm on meds that keep it pretty well normal.
You're normal?
No,
Since when?
I didn't say I was normal. I said I'm on meds that kind of keep my blood pressure normal.
Oh.
Me in general, I'm never going to be normal. You should already know that by now. Besides, you're not a normal person either.
I didn't say I was.
Dr. Pepper cream soda.
Really?
Yep. It's a cream soda type Dr. Pepper. It's actually pretty good.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah, well, I already got diabetes, my friend. I know how it is. That's why all my sodas I drink now are zero sugar. And I try to stay
Thank
away
God.
from a lot of
I
the
haven't
sugar.
got that yet. Yeah.
Well, with the kind of
Both my
metabolism,
parents
I don't
were.
know, dude. You better make sure you're checked because every time like that right there. If Tanya come over and stuck you with something, you'd bleed green.
I bleed green, so my
Yeah.
blood is green.
Yes. Well, that yellowish green that Mountain Dew is, because that's what they give you for transfusions.
Yeah.
You know this.
Well, see, I guess I'm just lucky. I never got diabetes. I not yet at least, but both my dad and my mom were diabetic.
Well, that's the
Dad,
main problem.
dad had to take he took insulin pills to control his. And then he ended up towards the end having Marianne give him shots. Then my mom,
He can give himself his shots. I'm
yeah,
on
but he
those
didn't like
Ozempic, and
doing it.
I'm on
My
those
mom
Ozempic, and
did
I
that
don't give
all the
him shots.
time, but for a while she couldn't. She didn't like doing it either, and she had Deborah and I think April learned how to give
Hmm.
my mom shots because I wouldn't do it either.
Well, I'm on Ozempic, and it's one of those pens. So I have to give myself the Ozempic shot. I just put it in my arm.
That sucks. I get the same way though. Doctors say something, something with the blood work, and you gotta wait to see that. Yeah, I do end up stressing myself out,
Yeah.
worrying all the time. Mark knows this.
Yeah. And a lot of times you don't need to.
No,
Hmm. A lot of times you stress out for nothing and you freak
yeah,
out for nothing.
but with all the shit that's happened to me over the years, I have a right, because it's better when I find out that, oh, it's not as bad as what it could have been. But with my
Hmm.
history, you know, I'm just lucky I got out of this without is out of this second stroke without as much damage as the first one did. You know, because the first one they had to keep me overnight in the hospital because I couldn't talk, I couldn't swallow without choking. I couldn't swallow water, just plain water without choking. You know, that was pretty rough. And this time it's just taken a long time for my hand to heal. And at this point, I'm almost thinking it may never get back to 100%, which is going to suck if
Yeah.
that's the case. But at least it's not as bad as what my dad's hand was, where it was kind of looked like that. And if you went to shake it, and he couldn't move it out of that position, it was like kind of stuck like that. And if you shook his hand, and Woody
Hmm.
was the one that did it, shook it just grabbed his hand just a little too much to shake his hand. He dropped him to his knees because of the pain.
Yep. I know.
You know, and that basically kind of pissed the old man off because he was used to being a lot stronger than that, a fighter and shit like this. And
I know.
after that happened, there was a lot he couldn't do anymore, you know, and he got worse. But there was no way he could drive as much as he ended up retiring shortly after that happened to his hand. He retired from driving at the bus company, and he very rarely drove after that himself. It was like always Marianne driving for him. Although I think he'd drive down to the bar, you know, that one bar that was right at the end of 51 or one. What is that runs through McFarland? 51 or 151?
That's Highway 51.
Yeah, and just right around B, where B comes into that, there was that bar that sat right on the corner there
Hmm.
that he'd visit all the time because it
You mean
wasn't.
the one that he made a deal to purchase and Marianne had a cow?
Yeah,
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 I know
yeah.
about this.
It would have been. That would have been the third. If Marianne would have allowed that, that would have been the third time that bar was owned by family. Because it was originally owned by Lois and Glenn, which was
Hmm.
my Aunt Lois and Uncle Glenn. And then that they owned it for like 10 years or so. And then my Uncle Paul owned it for another 10 years or so. And then it got bought out by I don't know how many different people until my dad's buddy owned it there at the end there. Uh, what was that called? I forgot what it was called, but the guy that owned it was a good friend of my dad's, so I'm sure they were
Hmm.
talking about buying. Yeah, that's not the first time he talked about buying a bar. He almost bought one in Madison on East Washington Avenue that sat down by the Darbo neighborhood. You know, there was a gas station, and then that mobile gas station, the walkover bridge, Club 3054, and then there was a Pizza Hut on the other side of the street. Next to the Pizza Hut, there used to be a bar called Hammer It In. And he almost bought the Hammer It In because he was talking with me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had other people in that, you know, he had a big meeting and he brought me in because he wanted me to manage the place. And I'm like, I don't think so. I says, I don't even like to drink. I don't like, well, that's the reason, you know, you don't drink. And it's like, you know, and second, there is no way I was going to manage a bar in that fucking neighborhood. You were asking for nothing but trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't have been able to do what he wanted. I mean, if you wanted to do a place like that, there was already too many bars like that in Madison. You know, I want to create a place for my bus driver friends to hang out at. They'd hang out there all but 1 or 2 days, and the next when they saw what was happening, they'd be like, "I don't think so. I'm never coming back. I'll stay going across the street from the bus company to the Avenue Bar." You know,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, those bars that were closer to the square and the bus company, that's where a lot of the city and state workers went to. You know, specifically because the Avenue Bar had good food. The Friendly Tavern had good food. You know, there was no way he was going to be able to compete with that, not in that neighborhood. You know, and that was the time that uh, Darbo neighborhood was really in bad shape. It's probably still in bad shape, but I mean, there was one time where I remember it was like in the late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't safe to walk anywhere near that neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you had neighborhood. There wasn't a neighborhood in Madison that I was afraid of until that time frame that Darbo was so bad.
Yeah.
I wouldn't walk anywhere near that neighborhood at night because it wasn't like some guy sitting there dealing pot on the streets. Okay, these were hardcore drugs and prostitution, you know, and these guys were always carrying, you know, you can bet that they had a firearm on them. It's like that
Mm,
neighborhood in 1 year.
most generally, in my experience, drug dealers had some sort of fire.
Right, right. But in that neighborhood, they had more deaths
Didn't matter what
than
neighborhood they
any
were at.
than any other neighborhood in Madison that year. You know that they sent out they it was because of Darbo that Blue Blanket started in Madison,
Mm-hmm.
and Blue Blanket was the code for the undercover police task force, you know, drug task force, and they basically blanketed that whole neighborhood for a couple of years, cleaning it up.
I believe it.
But it was, I mean, it was more dangerous than living on Allied Drive when I lived on Allied Drive. You know, and that was just one neighborhood that scared the hell out of me at a certain point. And then, just before we moved out of Madison, that neighborhood I lived over on the north side, I was afraid to go out at night and just cross the street to go to Walgreens or the gas station. You know, because of the stuff you'd hear at night. There was always cops. You always heard gunshots. That's one thing I don't miss about Madison. And living in some of those rough parts of Madison.
Cops and the gunshots.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was super easy to get weed back then, though. But it's at the same time, you knew the type of people that were coming in and out of the apartment complexes. And it was scary. Hearing some of that shit at 1, 2 o'clock in the fucking morning. I mean, all I had to do was open my front door, reach out with my hand, knock on my next door neighbor, and say, "Hey, I need a dime bag," and it's like, "Here, $10." You know, it was good weed, but not like what I get nowadays. But still, it was that easy to do.
Right.
But you could imagine some of the people that were coming in and out of that place, in that building, and some of the fights that would break out. Oh my God. I don't think there was a night that went by that the cops weren't at the building that I lived in or the one next door to it. I mean, any given night, I could look out my bedroom window and see cops in the parking lot. You know, I mean, that neighborhood scared me after a while. And like I said, when I was growing up as a kid until I was in my early 20s, I wasn't afraid of any part of Madison, you know.
Yeah, well, Madison's gotten bad compared to what it used to be.
Well, a
Like
lot
any other place, every place has kind of gotten bad
it's
compared to
got a
what it
lot to
used
do
to
with
be.
it went downhill after they ousted what's his name. Cuz he actually did good. There was two of them. They had two governors of Madison that did good. uh, and one wasn't the governor so much as a mayor, Soglin, but they did ousted him for drugs. And then what was the other one? There was another one. It was
I
like I think his
don't
name.
remember.
Oh, Tony Earl. They haven't had they haven't had people like that since then because they all got more concerned about making a buck than the neighborhoods and trying to I mean, that guy was like a guy that went down into those troubled neighborhoods and actually talked
Hmm.
to the people there that lived in those neighborhoods. And it's like, what can we do to help you? You know, you don't see that anymore. And that's the reason a lot of them fuckers are nothing but assholes. They don't give a shit. They don't care about the little guy no more.
No, they don't.
But it was cool to see when, somebody like that, though, that was, grew up or whatever around the area and just visited all those really poor, desperate, broken down neighborhoods and say, how do we fix this?
Well, yeah, and I mean that's basically that's the the good.
You know,
Those kind of people are the good.
and they don't get
Um,
voted back in. Yeah.
right. What am I looking for? Not good politicians, but they're the
Good
good people that are.
Samaritans.
Yeah, they're the ones that are. They're
They,
actually they're trying to do for the people as they
right.
promised to do.
Yeah. But I mean, he did that as he was before he was even campaigning, and after he continued to do it. I mean, I remember him going into that one. What was it? They renamed the street, but what did it used to be called? Somerset Circle. Which was right off of West Badger Road there. I think it's
Yeah.
now known as Parker Place or whatever. It's like you can't rename a road or something and think that it's like, oh, we're not going to call it shit no more. We're going to call it something else. It's not going to smell better. It'll still stink. Just changing the name ain't going to fix the issue. But that's
Oh,
what.
it's not. That's not Sunset Circle. You're thinking Simpson Place.
Well, that too. No, Somerset Circle was the first one to do that.
Well,
Somerset Circle,
Simpson Place is over off of
Monona Drive
Winona
area.
Drive area.
Yeah, I know where that is. Right? All those bad neighborhoods, the streets got renamed.
hmm
And
You can
Somerset,
you can scrub it all you want, polish it up all
Somerset
you
was
want,
the
and pour
first one.
perfume on it all you want, but a turd's still going to be a turd.
Right.
Hmm.
And it's like you don't fix the problem by changing a road's name.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
But
I always thought that didn't that really didn't make sense. It never made sense. And it's like, I'm shocked that a lot of the road change, Gaslight Square no longer exists either. I didn't even know what that is now.
Gaslight Square.
Yeah, there used to be
Uh,
a tiny little neighborhood over by the Coliseum. I think, what is that? The Hyundai dealership that sits right there on the top of the hill.
I
Uh,
don't
by
recall.
Badger and Rusk Road there in
Oh,
the
down
trailer
from the hookah
court,
lounge, down by the hookah lounge there.
whatever that Delta
It's by
77, the trailer park.
Yeah, over there by the trailer park.
Yeah, well, right behind it used to be Gaslight Square. The apartments that sat right behind those car
Yeah.
dealerships used to be called Gaslight Square. You know, and they changed it right around the same time they changed. Actually, I think that was the first one they changed, even before the one on West Badger Road.
Yeah, Simpson Street over there.
Yeah, and well, they not only did they change that, they changed. They took down some of Monona Shore's apartments and
Mm-hmm.
one or two buildings that were on Hoboken, and because Simpson went between I can't remember what street to Hoboken was the other end of it, and they took and controlled burn.
Didn't Simpson run off of Broadway?
Yeah, so it ran between Broadway and Hoboken. So at the Hoboken and the Broadway end or whatever, they burned down, controlled burn to the ground and totally demolished, buried in the basements and everything. And what they assumed were drug houses, you know, because I used to live on Hoboken at one time, and one of the apartment building I live in no longer exists.
Yeah.
And I was over there at it was like winter time. I was over at Southtown was still Southtown somewhat. You know, it was still kind of a mall inside. And I was there doing some Christmas shopping, and they had a huge fire, and they were controlling. It was all over the news that night. They controlled burn the apartment building I used to live in because they assumed it was a drug house, and they evicted everybody and burned it all down,
Wow.
and then filled in the basement, you know, so that it couldn't be rebuilt on. And to this day, it's like an empty little lot there. I think they extended the parking lot of the one apartment building that faces Broadway. You know, it's like that's not how you fix something like that. That doesn't work all the time because they're just going to move someplace else. You know, and besides that, as far as I knew when I lived there, I tried so hard too. When I lived there was this old lady. She only drove the car in the summertime, twice a year to church and
Mm-hmm.
then to a cemetery, you know, to visit her husband on their anniversary, right? But she had this old, beautiful, and she kept it covered because there was no garages, so it had a cover over it. But it was a Ford Fairlane,
Mm. Fort Fairlane.
yeah, from like the 50s or the 60s. Beautiful car too. It was in beautiful shape, but
Yeah.
she only drove it twice a year in the summertime.
Wow.
Almost got that old lady to sell it to me one year. A lot of people were trying to get her to sell it. I mean, you didn't see cars like that in that good a shape.
Nah, not
But
really.
the thing was, she had a driver's license. She really never drove. Her husband was the one that drove, and they only drove that car to church on Sundays when he was alive.
Mm.
You know, because he used to have an old pickup truck that they'd go to like do their shopping, you know, grocery shopping or whatever,
Mm.
you know, a daily driver.
Right.
But that car was only driven, you know, once a week until he passed away, and then after that, she only drove it twice in the summertime. And the church and the cemetery that she drove through was not that far away because she went to that cemetery that was down on across from Joe's Fire Station down there at the Menards end of Broadway. You know, Memorial Gardens or whatever that was called, that big one. Same one I think
Yeah.
Brenda's buried in.
Yeah. I don't remember what the name of it is.
But mm-mm. I'm glad I got out of that fucking town.
What, Madison?
Yes.
There are parts of Madison that's not good for anybody.
Well, there's nothing left worth a crap in Madison anymore, really. You know,
I know.
unless you work there. You know, that's the only thing it's worth going to. You know, because but all those stores that you would want to visit, you can find them in
Mm-hmm.
smaller towns just outside of Madison somewhere. You know, you got Woodman's and Hy-Vee's in other towns. You've got, you know, and what's left of Easttown and Westtown Mall, well, that's mostly for the rich. You
Yeah.
know, those high class high class stores in there, and you know, Spencer's kind of went downhill over the years.
Yeah.
Spencer's has become an adult bookstore kind of thing inside of a shopping mall. And it's like, I remember when it was cool, you'd find all these types of different types of black lights, black light posters, the really cool t-shirts and concert t-shirts, uh, and all kinds of different lights that would like, you turn on the music, they'd beat to, they'd go with the beat of the music or whatever, shit like that, and then, your little movie
Hmm.
things here and there. But now it's all this like goth crap, you know, goth type clothing
What
and
you got
stuff.
anything against
Adult
God?
No, but I'm just saying it's not the same as what it started out to be, you know. And I think if it would have stayed the same, they'd probably be making more money, you know. I mean,
Hmm.
that store when it came to Easttown Mall, it put the other store that was almost just like it but locally owned out of business. And that store was called like the Moon Fun Shop, you know.
Yeah.
And the Moon Fun Shop was a lot like, it had like the beaded curtains that stuff from the 70s, beaded curtains, the black lights, the posters, the same stuff. And then, you had stores in that mall where it's like, here, this thing's nothing but customized t shirts, pick a patch. And now the ones that they got in the mall, they're so expensive. I don't, I would never spend that on t shirts, you know? I mean, and then it's like going to the Dells. You got all these t shirt shops, and it's like this one's just like this one. There's nothing different between the two stores.
Right.
It's like they took the same store and stamped it 4 times in the shopping district of Wisconsin Dells. It's like, what the fuck did you do that for? It don't make sense. It really don't make sense to me. Why have 4 shops, big ones, all the same merchandise with the exact same sayings, the exact same sales, on a big shopping mall like that main downtown Wisconsin Dells? It just don't make sense. You know, I remember when you only had one of those t-shirt shops downtown. And then you had all these specialty shops. It's like, what happened to the specialty shops? You know?
No, no.
I mean, remember when you and I collected knives and swords? We were doing that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
they were real big, right? Bug.
Yeah.
We had the Bud. I
Yeah,
had
they were big and everything, but
I had the Bud K magazine coming to me and everything, right?
hmm, so did I.
Anytime I went down to or went up to the Dells back in the day, I could walk into all these different shops, specialty shops, and I'd find knives and swords, but not they wouldn't all be the same in each store like they are now. All
Oh,
right.
now
Now it's
nothing's
like you can
individual.
find the same knives and swords in this shop as you can in that shop, and they'll be over in this one over here, and all the same prices too. But it's nothing unique. Before, back in the day, man, I found a lot of my unique stuff up
Hmm.
there. I mean, it's all the same type of swords or the same movie swords or the and it's like, come on, give me a break. You know, I used to find some very unique blades back
Yeah,
in
well,
the day up in the
I still
Dells.
laugh at you because you have in your Excalibur.
I got that at truck stop.
This one, on the other hand, is my dagger. This one is unique. There's not another one made. It's Spanish. It's Spanish steel.
Yeah, see, I got rid of all that stuff, and now I wish I didn't so much because I had those things that were made by a hobo.
And I actually have a
Trail
true
ties that got turned into knives.
I have a true katana sword too. It's not made by a like one of the major well known people, but it's an actual katana.
Yeah,
So
the only thing I still have is Excalibur. That's it.
and I won't ever sell my katana.
Um, I used to have a ton of
For
belt
one reason,
buckles.
I know how to wield that motherfucker.
And I also used to have a ton of belt buckles. This is after moving and not being able to display stuff, and having to come up with money to do this or do that. So sold it a lot of it at a garage sale. But a lot of my belt buckles, the really cool and unique ones, I found in the Dells.
Yeah.
That was like there was like 4 or 5 Indian trading posts.
Yeah.
There's only one left. One of the 4 originals are left up there, and it's more of a museum than anything else. I like going up there every time I go to the Dells. I like stopping by there because I find some unique stuff in there. Because it's almost run like going downtown to like a collectible shop, or one of those where you've got multiple people and they've got stands inside there selling stuff, kind of like an indoor flea market, with antique stuff that you wouldn't find
Yeah.
anyplace else. you know they're trying to save the Dells, and I'm thinking, I see this thing come across Facebook, save the Dells, save the Dells. And I'm thinking to myself, I so want to post,
When
get
he
on there.
saved the Dells, it's already done up there
Well,
with the
the
Dells.
thing is, I'm
There's
sitting
no
there. I
saving them
want
anymore.
to, I want to go on some of these posts and say it's too fucking late to save the Dells. You should have been doing this in the '80s. You
Yeah, no
know,
shit.
because as soon as Mount Olympus came in and started taking over, the Dells went to hell. The minute Mount Olympus put up its water park in there,
Mm-hmm.
the whole entire Dells went to hell. And it's getting even worse because the guy's buying up he bought up the Pink Flamingo. And they put up the Pink Flamingo, and they're talking about, posts of it, and it's like it's getting demolished, and it's like, you can thank the guy that owns Mount Olympus. You know, I mean,
Yep.
that whole place that Tanya and I went to when we went there uh, to do the boat ride at night, the haunted boat tour, right, of the
Yeah.
Dells. The place we had to go to get the tickets and wait in line and everything for, that whole area used to be one big shopping mall. Now it's not. It's like you got an outdoor deck there that's
Mm-hmm.
attached to a bar, and it's like What the
Yep.
fuck?
I kind of know where you're talking about.
They took out the whole. There was like a whole little shopping center and the restaurants that were in that place because it was like the lower level was food court because you could go outside on the deck and eat and overlook the river there and where they were loading the ducks and stuff like that for the tours and stuff. And you could sit out there at like a table and eat and stuff. But the food, they had some really, really good restaurants that weren't like big box type restaurants like everywhere else you see on that strip. And it's like, yeah, it's too fucking late for the Dells. You can't save that no more. There's no fucking way. You know, that guy's bought up too much land and all the tradition's gone. And the minute oh, what was it? Tommy Bartlett passed away, it was over for the Dells. You know, he was kind of like a big person for keeping it as original as possible. You know, he was like on some kind of board of directors and stuff too for that. Now his place is up for sale because he passed away. You know, his was like, I mean, he'd been doing that water show on the river for God, even since I was a kid. You know, once he was gone, that's when Mount Olympus started buying up all them fucking hotels. You know, and now you can't go up there without spending over $100 on a hotel.
Pretty much. Actually, I can go up there and not spend $100 on a hotel.
Yeah, but that's because you're special.
That's because I got all those damn points.
But you know, it's like you had these hotels, these small ones
I
that
know.
were
I know.
locally owned, and you could get the room for $65 or whatever. You know, it's just a room, you know, to sleep in because you're up. You know, we do that. You know, Brenda and I used to do that back in the day. We rent the cheapest hotel we could find up there, and within a good, reasonable walking
Mhm.
distance to the downtown area. For what is that? Every year they do that Waziwa Days or whatever.
Wazawa days.
Yeah, Wazawa Days. You know, it's like their last giant flea market of the year, of the season, before everything
Hmm.
closes down. And we did that every year for quite a few years. And because the deals you would get, I mean, you know, some of those unique shops, they would be selling their, you know, deep discounts just to, you know, because it was the end of the season for them,
Yeah.
trying to reduce that inventory. Man, I remember we got two really nice sweatshirts. You know, the really heavy duty type sweatshirts, and hers had Winnie the Pooh on it, and mine had Tigger. You know, and we got them two for one price. You know, buy one got the other one. You know, I mean that's the kind of deals you would run across up there. Uh, I haven't been to that, and I think Tanya and I went to it the one time before or shortly after we were married, and it sucked. You know,
Yeah.
there used to be a really cool NASCAR shop up there in this place that it was like two-tier. It looked very antique-ish type building, you know, two tiers to it. On the second floor, it had a shop in the corner that took up a good portion of the second floor. Nothing but NASCAR collectibles in it. You know, it was like, you know, also back during the time that, you know, Rusty and Dale was still alive and all that racing. So you had nothing but NASCAR collectibles in this place. Oh, you know what that place is now? It's
Hmm.
more like an escape room,
Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
and some fantasy type Dungeon and Dragon type real life looking thing, wizard something or other. It's like, what the fuck happened here? You know, but they're bringing back Mark's Big Boy. Well, what the fuck you gonna bring back Mark's Big Boy when everything else is fucking gone?
Yeah, and it's all and everything else falling apart.
Yeah, I mean, they, you you could. I went by there. They didn't have the. Mark was kind of sitting on his side on the roof. They didn't quite have him up yet. Then the
We
next
knew
time,
him as we knew him as Bob's Big Boys.
yeah, right. In California, it was known as Bob's Big Boy.
Hmm.
Here, he was known as Mark's Big Boy. But they had him laying on his side. Then what was it, like a couple weeks later? We were back up there, and the thing was standing upright on the roof, and the things were up in the windows. The store was, had all the furniture. So they were getting ready to open up in like a week or two after that. It's like, you got some of this tradition coming back, but all of it's going out. You know, it just doesn't make sense. I wish I was a fucking billionaire. I'd buy up a good portion of the Dells and just turn it back into what it was.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, well, there was the coolest place in the world. Another cool place that don't exist up there. Right on that main strip where all the shopping's usually done, Yeah, that
Hmm.
main strip. I don't know what the street's called, but it's right there by the dam, you know. And you get past the first block or two past the railroad tracks on the one side, there was this haunted house there, they called it a haunted house, right? But they had this real kind of big looking animatronic type wolf out front of it that kind of looked like he was rabbit, and stuff. It kind of reminded me of Woody's chest tattoo, the one with the wolf on and the castle behind it and shit. And nope, that place doesn't even exist anymore. And I swear that place was there for at least 40 years, maybe longer. And then there was the place where you could mine. They kind of like mine for gold, diamonds, or whatever rocks. There was mine that place shut down. They lost their lease. It's like, yep,
Oh yeah, I know that place
yeah,
because it was like the Dell's Mining Company or something
yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah,
It was the
and
Dallas Mining Company.
and
That's what it was called.
we went in there. Kayla and I went in there and did that before. You know,
Well,
in
last
fact, I
time
think
I was up there,
I think we took Leon in there to let him do it.
last time Tanya and I were up there, I I stopped into that place. Just kind of look around and so on and so forth. And I got talking with the young lady that owned the place and got a little history on it. At that time, their lease was about to expire because they told me what happened. They lost their lease. They haven't been able to find. At that point, they hadn't been able to find another spot. They didn't know what the hell they were going to do. But I was right because when we were talking, she was telling me how they used to be closer to the river area,
Hmm.
closer to the river end of it, down by the river,
Yeah,
and they had
in a
water.
van down by the river.
Yeah, they had the water coming up like inside the store and you know,
Yeah, they had it all set up so they could pull from the river to do the
right.
water thing. Yeah.
But she's like, her grandfather started the business, her father took it over, and then when her and her husband
Hmm.
took it over like just a couple of years ago. You know, but the place has been up in the Dells in the same area, general area, for like 40 plus years. And it's like sad that they can't find another spot to be on that same strip
Mm-hmm.
again because of the asshats that own Mount Olympus and stuff. They're buying up all the properties. You know, uh, it really sucks when stuff like that. I mean, you know, back in the 70s and the early 80s, the Dells was probably the biggest tourist attraction and brought in the most money for Wisconsin.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Now, nothing but a tourist trap, and they probably get away with paying nothing in taxes because it's like just one guy or one company owns 90% of it. Nah, probably more like 80% of the Dells, but still. I mean, they you used to see the big blue ox up there. What
Mm-hmm.
was that? Paul Bunyan. No, that place has moved. I mean, it's like there is so much tradition and stuff gone. It's too bad that one Indian post is so small. They go because some of uh, like statues and stuff that used to be out, and there were the signs that used to be out. That would be a cool museum, you know, to a way to make a museum if you get your hands on some of the really old signs or the really old like statue type things. You know, because they had that blue ox and Paul Bunyan there, and then you had Indian statues made out of wood, carved out of wood, all over the place downtown.
I kind of remember some of that. Yeah, I remember there's a lot of that stuff that you knew about that wasn't there when I got out here.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the stuff you're talking about when you were a kid. I didn't know you when you were a kid.
No,
I
but
wasn't here when you were a kid. So a lot of that I didn't know about.
yeah,
I
but
only
see,
know
that's
what I
also
know from when I got here in
yeah, but
'93.
see, but that's the sad thing is because you don't get to see what it was like. You know, you didn't get to experience the house of the future, Xanadu. You know, now
But I still got to experience stuff that was up
a
there.
mini
There's a
golf
lot of
course
stuff that
sits
was up
there
there.
now. Storybook Gardens was gone. You know, a lot of things changed. It's like they should have never shut down Riverview Park and Waterworld. You know, because that was like one price for an all-day pass to two different parks. That was still there when you came around. Riverview Park and Waterworld probably was, but but it's just things shouldn't. I mean, Madison's gone to hell too.
Dude, everything's gone to hell.
I mean, Madison had all kinds of things for kids to do and teenagers to do.
Yeah,
Now,
it's all gone to hell.
zero. Drive-ins are gone. We can thank the digital age for that. You know, the invention of the VCR and DVD player and all of that.
Yeah, but that was inevitable.
God damn it! I have a
That's the
problem.
thing. That was inevitable having that happen.
Yeah, I think my pipe is clogged. Yeah, fucking A. Fucking A.
You got a clogged pipe now.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping this year we have less problems than we had last year so that we can get out and do more, whether it's investigate places or just make connections at Paracons or just go seeing some cool roadside attractions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be
So
nice.
I got, I got,
And to be honest about it, I would like to be able to go back out to Lee's place and do another investigation out.
well, I
But the
haven't,
thing is, the problem is with that because of last year,
I
he's
haven't called
pissed,
to talk to him yet. I've
right?
got,
And that was the whole thing. I mean, we were supposed to show up out there. We never made it because of
yeah,
other shit.
I'll tell you more about that when we go off the line. But, you know, but I got like a bucket list I'm forming that I want to do before I pass away or before I can't travel as much. And there's a lot of trips to Illinois. All right. Then, not a whole lot of out of state stuff because that can get quite expensive and you know take up a lot of planning time. But I don't want to. It's kind of too late to see Graceland or anything like that. So I'm
Hmm.
more for wanting to go down like Route 66 and stop by the Pink Elephant Antique Mall and try the burgers from the 50 style diner that's part of that. Um, just experience some of those things, take some pictures, you know, go out to where is that? I think it was Missouri that Uranus Fudge Packing Company is at that Deb went to on her honeymoon, and I saw pictures. Stuff like that.
Hmm.
I wouldn't mind going back out towards Devil's Punch Bowl area. Because there was a lot of cool things out there, including the Devil's Punch Bowl. You weren't with us that year.
I wasn't with you guys that time.
Right. And back to the because we had a hard time trying to find things because of construction, but we did go out and about uh, um, that Big Cat Mountain State Park.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there's a few places around and in and around there that are really cool that I want to go back and spend some more time like filming and taking some pictures. There's a couple places in the
Hmm.
Dells that I found out about and that I'd like to take a look at, and take
Yeah.
some pictures and go down and explore. Things that just it ain't going to cost me money as much as it is gas and time.
Lisa's got dinner going, and they can smell it up here. It's starting to drive me crazy.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
I the only thing I had to eat today was a bowl of cereal this morning.
I made French toast.
Well, you can French toast it all you want.
I made myself some French toast this morning. Well, we've got things going just right around here, and Tanya and I have finally got a system down just right around here, so that we can keep things food in the house And because of doctor, there was one point where I had lost I had dropped like 10 or 15 pounds when I
I can
saw.
give you some of mine if you want it. I'd like to drop some weight. It's hard for
So
me.
so I've been making myself, a lot, breakfast, trying to eat something for lunch. I'm trying to eat more during the day. So I've just had this. I don't know what it is. I've got this weird craving though. There, I remember a place, and
You're a weird craving.
yeah, it's like I remember this place that I went to. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a sub place, you know. And they
Subway?
no, no, no.
Jimmy John's?
It wasn't a chain store.
Big Mike's?
It was a
Or
local
Jersey Mike's?
it was a local store.
Elio?
They only had one store.
Cousins?
Actually, Actually, it was called Cellar Subs, and it used to sit in the basement of some place on State Street, and,
Ugh.
and it was called Cellar Subs. But I don't know what it was, but they had this sub sauce, and it wasn't like mayonnaise; it was something else. Like maybe a
Yeah.
garlic infused ranch dressing or something, or whatever. But it was on almost every one of their subs, and and it was just amazing. Their subs were like amazing, and it was called Cellar Subs in Madison, and it sat on State Street, and it was in the basement of one of the buildings. And if you walked by and didn't know it was there, you'd miss it because they only had the sign, and it was just a
Hmm.
small red sign by the door to go downstairs, and it said Cellar Subs. That's it. If you didn't notice that sign, you would miss it completely. But the place was always packed, right around lunchtime or dinner time. You know,
Hmm.
they had a line coming up the stairs and outside sometimes. That's how busy that sub place used to be.
That's actually pretty cool. Local local business. Nice. So anyway, what else? We got 15 minutes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, where'd you go? You're not on the screen anymore.
No way. Oh,
Now you're back. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I brought my screen back over and you were gone. I don't know how you got off the
well,
screen.
I don't know. I was trying to look this up, and every time I look it up to see photos of.
You get weird shit happening. This program that we use is kind of strange in its own right.
Well, I'm using a different browser too.
Well, so am I. I'm over on Opera now.
Yeah, this wants me to fucking join their fucking site. Otherwise, I don't get to see the page. Yeah, it takes me right off of the page. Fucking A. Man. I had a place. It looked like, and it showed me a picture of the place and the subs, and I couldn't even bring up a picture because I'd have to subscribe to the fucking page, the paper. It was
That's
actually like
stupid.
sponsored by the Wisconsin State Journal, so it was like one of their pages, and it was like
Oh yeah.
throwback pictures of restaurants from the 80s and 90s that no longer exist, in Madison. And I click on it and I get to scroll through the first picture or two, and then all of a sudden, subscribe now. And if I click, I'm not going to subscribe, it totally changes that page I was on, so I can't see the pictures. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, fuck you. I mean, the first picture wasn't so. I mean, if I still want an A&W, there's still one or two of them around. So A&W is like kind of like a falsehood. You know, so I couldn't even get past scrolling past it because they had this big like silo type tower that looked like a big mug or whatever of root beer, and then you scroll down, and that's when that thing says subscribe now, because you're scrolling down to see the next pictures,
Right.
and you scroll down, and then it just totally disappears because you're not subscribing, and it's like fuck it, man. There was some great restaurants in Madison, believe it or not, at one time
Oh, I believe it.
that didn't exist anywhere else. There was one. I only went there once. It was a little Italian joint, and it sat right on the dead end part of Francis Street off of University Avenue.
Hmm.
Okay, and I can't even remember what that was called, but it was a little Italian. It was like one of these high class joints. You kind of had you couldn't walk into it wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Okay, you kind of had but the food was and then of course there were Josie's used to sit on the corner of Park and Regent where that big high rise is now. Josie's was like a neighborhood staple Italian restaurant because
Hmm.
about a block and a half away was the Italian Workmen's Club. And on that same corner, before they commercialized it, on the same corner, Park and Regent, they used to do the Fiesta Italia there in 20 South Park's parking lot. That whole neighborhood was called the Greenbush neighborhood. And then you had over on um, East Johnson, and I can't remember I think it was First Street, East Johnson First or anyway, it was one of those numbered streets. Used to be Stevens Restaurant, right? That place had my dad took me there a couple of times. Had the best prime rib. It was really, really good. And
Hmm.
it was a restaurant that was kind of like a bar restaurant together. And they had all these Elvis Presley porcelain type wine bottles all over the place in there. It made Madison newspapers and the magazines several times just because of those statues that used to be in that place. But the food That prime rib was just, oh my God. I've never had anything like it since. But there was so many great restaurants in Madison. Now they're all chain store type. You know,
Yeah, it's hard to find a good mom and pop or individually owned place anymore.
even though there was like uh, it was called something else, and it was called the Curve later in time, but it used to sit on Park Street, right around the street that
I
went
know where it's at. It's right
right,
across from St. Mary's there now,
right across from St. Mary's there, and then they opened
and
up
it's on Park Street. It's the
right,
Curve. It's the
and
Curve restaurant.
yeah, and then they opened the second one over there on Fair Oaks at one time.
Hmm.
Now, back before that was called the Curve, it was called Mike's. Okay, and man, it may be the like tiniest little diner that you can't hold a whole lot of people in, and looked like it'd been sitting there forever, even back in the late '70s, early '80s. They had some really good food there. You know,
Hmm.
it's like that one restaurant that we stopped at and had a good cheap breakfast on Cottage Grove Road in Cottage Grove in that little strip
Yeah,
mall.
I remember that little place, and that was the ones. That was the owners of that were the same people that own the Green Forest restaurant, which is actually closed up now.
Yeah, but little restaurant diners like that were like the hidden gems in Madison and the surrounding areas, and it's hard to find them now
Call this thing a raccoon dog.
because you've got you don't have any steakhouses like you used to.
Hmm.
The one that used to sit on Sherman Avenue closed down like earlier this year or late last year. The Esquire Club used to sit right on Sherman Avenue there, right next to the
Yeah, I know where you're talking about.
Speedway, not too far from Oscar. That place closed down. That place was a
The
Madison.
Esquire's gone now.
Yeah, that
Oh
place was
crap!
that place was like a Madison staple even when I was a kid. You know, people would have weddings there and stuff. But the food was good if you ate there, especially
Yeah,
for the
but it was
French
expensive.
fries. Well, yeah, most restaurants like that were, but you had little steakhouse type
The
restaurants.
Esquire Club, or the Esquire was fairly expensive.
Well, yeah, it was high class. You couldn't wear jeans and shirts, t-shirts into that place. They wouldn't allow you through the front door.
Hmm.
But you don't even have those like locally owned little diners too much anymore in the Madison area. Yeah, I mean, to find a place like that, you have to go way out of town.
Hmm.
In some cases, we got one here. You know, I mean, Tanya and I frequent the one here often. There's a Main Street Cafe.
Is that the one? That's the one down there off of like Fourth and Main or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that nice little. That's actually a nice little restaurant down there.
They leased or bought the building right next to them and opened up more space. So they've got more dining
So they're a little bit
space.
bigger.
So they're a little bit bigger now.
That's cool.
But their prices don't change. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd go there any day over the Pine Cone. Okay.
Hmm.
Pine Cone's a truck stop. Pine Cone's about the same as going to Denny's. But this little restaurant
Did
They've
you
got,
just compare the pine cone to Denny's?
yes,
You're an idiot.
because the prices and the food's about the same.
No, it's not. No, it's not. The pine cone is better than Denny's.
You know,
The pine cone's better than Denny's. It's always going to be
you
better than
you
Denny's.
must have been to a bad Denny's then. But
No.
anyway, I've gone to a really good one though.
Yeah, I've been
To
to
a
good
really
ones, and
anyway,
I telling you, the pine cone's better.
but I think the my favorite is like these little restaurants that are like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
been in this town forever, started here, been in the same spot, blah blah blah, owned by the same people, same family, whatever. But it's like you can't beat the prices. You know, you go to Pinecone or Denny's or someplace else, you're going to pay a lot more for the same thing. You know, and it's like look at when we went to that same thing, that little restaurant on Cottage Grove Road that we had that breakfast in. That
Yeah,
was a
in
cheap
Cottage
breakfast.
Grove.
That was a cheap
That
breakfast.
was
We could
inexpensive, and it was a really good breakfast.
we could have never got a breakfast like that at Denny's or Pinecone and paid that much. We would
Well,
have
no,
paid more than that.
right? No, I agree with you on that.
And the food in that little diner was a lot better
And I'll tell you
than
right now,
Denny's or
there
Pinecone.
is there's a there's a restaurant in Fort Atkinson right now. I'm not talking about the brick oven. The brick oven's good. They got really good pizza. But there's another one just up the street from them. Used to be an old country kitchen or something like that. It's a Armenian family, I think, that owns it now,
Oh yeah,
and it's the family restaurant. It's Fort Family Restaurant, and it's really good.
Fort Family Restaurant.
Yep,
I don't
it's up
know.
right. It's up just by the
See,
Ford dealership there.
I don't know about your reviews because your reviews suck.
Not like yours are any better.
You know, you tell me, "Oh, this pizza's really good," and it's like, I didn't like the brick oven.
Brick oven pizza is good. That other place that you're talking about, their pizza is greasy as fuck. It looked like they put a fucking slab of lard on it before they threw it in the fucking oven.
Uh, no.
Why would I want to eat a fucking pizza that'll give me
You
heartburn?
know,
It's just like Rockies. Rockies sucks like dog because for one, they
actually,
oversauce it, and for two, it's
actually,
greasier than fuck.
see, the thing is, I know we're gonna go over, but oh well, fuck them. I don't care.
No,
At
I
this
want to get
point,
done. So I want to go eat.
you know, places like Rockies and Pizza Pit and stuff like that, they will never be as good as they once was because when Rockies started out in the 70s or whenever they started in Madison on Gilman Street there, because that's where the first Rockies ever was just a block off Madison or block off State Street in Madison. Back in that era, the 70s and the early 80s, Rocky's Pizza was really good. So was Pizza Pit, and Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut had that personal pan pizza that was just, really good.
Pizza Hut had a problem
Nowadays,
too of having a lot of greasiness to it.
nowadays, their pizza sucks
Yeah,
compared to what it used to.
Rockies. I'm sorry to tell you, dude, but Rockies sucks because,
The
like I
the
said, they over sauce it.
the only thing I like
They put
about
way more sauce in there than it needs, and
the,
then
there's two
the
things I like about Rockies.
I don't know what pepperoni and sausage they use, but that shit's greasier than fuck.
What I do like the sausage. I don't like the pepperoni because it's gotten spicier over the years.
Spiciness doesn't bother me. It's the fucking grease that comes out of it.
And uh, but I'd still do like the breadsticks if I get them fresh out of the oven.
No, because they use too much. They just use too much. Their pans, they grease them too. They put too much oils in there. And if they really wanted to do it right, they'd use olive oil. They wouldn't use the fucking
Well, they
vegetable
don't.
oil shit.
They cut costs over the years.
And that's the main problem right there with a
It's
lot of
like
these places. They
you
cut the
go,
goddamn costs,
you tell me something, you go back and say
so their
it
quality
was
goes downhill.
say it's like 1980 or 81 when you and I were in high school, right? If you had off campus and you went to a McDonald's, the burger was probably real nice and juicy and stuff like that. Now it's like chewing on leather.
Back back then, McDonald's didn't cook their shit and put it under a heat oven for they everything was done fresh right off the griddle.
Well, it wasn't frozen meat either.
No, it was all fresh right
You
off the
saw
fucking griddle.
you saw a semi
That's why
truck.
back in the 80s, that's why back in the 80s and 90s, McDonald's was actually good. Now it sucks.
You saw a semi truck in their parking lot every morning
Yeah.
delivering. You know, same with
But see,
Burger King.
that's the whole fucking problem with all
And
of these fast food shits anymore.
yeah, the shakes even went
They
downhill.
even, well, yeah, I mean, either frozen shit that they bring in, and then whenever they do cook it, it sits for half the fucking day
Yep.
under a heat lamp or in a heat box to keep it from keep it warm.
Oh,
And
that's
not only that doesn't sit there half a day, it sits there in fucking grease.
yep. But see,
Okay.
that's the thing. You need to go. You know, that's why the
That's
best.
why I keep telling you. That's why I keep telling you. If we had In and Out Burger out here, dude, they'd put a lot of these
That
fucking places
that
out of
that
business.
just sounds dirty.
In and Out Burger is
I know it
nothing
just
but
sounds
fresh. It's
dirty.
all fresh. Everything's fresh.
It still sounds
It's
dirty.
it's they're they source, they local source
You
all
know,
their vegetables. They local source everything
if,
that they can. That's
if
why
I'm
you
not
don't see
mistaken,
them everywhere.
they were also featured on. Aside from a lot of movies, but because this is kind of 420
They
movies
were
that are
the,
coming out,
they were in the
they,
Big Lebowski.
yeah, but they were also
They were mentioned in the Big Lebowski.
and it was also mentioned in Dazed and Confused, or seen in they were in a, you know.
Hmm. I know.
But I'm just saying that's a California thing.
Yes. Well, it's not just a California thing. It's that they're all the way out in Colorado right now.
Well,
I'd
West
love
Coast.
to see them. I'd love to see them go nationwide, but she won't do it. She won't franchise. The
Well, no,
woman that owns it, her grandparents are the ones that started it. She owns it now. Her parents didn't want to have anything to do with it, so they gave it to her. She took it over and she owns the place.
but
She's
the
running everything, and she
franchise.
will not franchise. She refuses
That's
to
because when you
franchise out because
franchise,
she cannot trust.
well, yeah,
She
the
has
quality
trust
of the food will
issues
go
with people.
down. Well,
No,
it's not
she has
trust
trust. No,
issues,
no, it's not the quality of the food.
but
It's not necessarily the quality of food. It's the fucking service.
well, that
And
too.
it
But
and
I'm
it
just saying, if
and
you
I'll tell you right now,
open up a
she
place like
pays her
that here,
employees. She pays her employees. If you did a comparison of what she pays her employees compared to what McDonald's pays theirs or Wendy's pays theirs. Now McDonald's and Wendy's are huge. Okay, they're multi-billion-dollar chain. She pays her employees more. Pays them a fucking living wage. Where McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King and all them, nah,
you
they'll pay
start
the
out at
minimum they
minimum
can.
wage at those places.
Yeah,
Whatever minimum wage is, you start out
but
at.
In and Out Burger isn't. She doesn't do that. She pays
That's
them
why
more.
that's why these kids don't want to work at
And I'm
places like
telling you, man,
that.
In
They
and Out.
think they can go right
You
out of
go
high school into something that pays more than minimum wage.
Nope, you can't. No,
And,
you can't. That's the
you
main
have
thing.
no
But you
experience out
can,
of
you
high
can, and
school
can't.
because these kids in high school now, it's all about having fun and stuff. While I mean, You know, when I was in high school, I worked all 4 years of my high school existence.
That's great.
You know,
Well, I actually want to go
kids
work
don't do
on
that
dinner.
today. Yeah, you gonna go eat?
I want to go work on dinner.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're over. All right.
All
Till
right.
next time.
We'll
Stay
talk to you
safe.
guys later.
Remember, anything's possible.
Bye.